Imagine unknowingly taking part in a 40-year medical experiment at the expense of your own welfare. That's exactly what happened in 1972 when the United States government used 623 African American men as participants in an experiment which they had not conclusively been disclosed about, given consent for, and were purposefully misled all throughout the study. Shrouded in mystery and deceit, the Tuskegee Syphilis study targeted this group of men because they lacked education, money, and power. To add insult to injury, the study was under the supervision of government officials and medical professionals, and the experiment itself was kept secret for 4 decades until it was eventually exposed. Tuskegee, located in Mason County, Alabama, is a city with only about 25,000 people. At the time of the study, this part of Alabama had undergone a major transformation for the bad. What was once a thriving agricultural standpoint, the downgrade with the land coupled with the Civil War made Tuskegee nearly a ghost town. Those who had stayed had an average income of about $2 a day, and they lacked electricity as well as running water. The racial atmosphere was tense, as African Americans who made up the majority of the population lacked essential food, health, and educational resources. The small town's common people were left in total darkness on what was going on behind closed doors. Its medical research community, on the other hand, knew just about everything regarding the study. Syphilis is, by definition, a bacterial infection that is commonly transmitted sexually. When contracted, the first stage is characterized by a painless sore, the second stage by a rash, and the final stage being damage to the brain, eyes, heart, and nervous system, resulting in a lifelong battle. Unlike today, in the 1930s, there were no antibiotics and other treatments that could negate the symptoms associated with the disease. While some affected may continue to live long lives, there are others who suffer to the highest extent, some going blind, paralyzed, and experiencing sudden death due to aneurysms. The origins of the study started with Julius Rosewand Fund, which was interested in solving social, economical, and racial problems that African American communities faced. The organization teamed up with the United States Public Health Service to tackle, treat, and understand syphilis. Mason County had a whopping 36% syphilis rate, which tremendously exceeded other parts of the country. While the study was initially successful, the Great Depression introduced a complicated dilemma. They were starting to lack money to fund their study to help combat syphilis, and ultimately suspended the project altogether because treatments were not in their budget. While they no longer could conduct the initial study, the syphilis-laden county was too great of an opportunity to miss for Dr. Taliaferro Clark, who insisted that they should create a study of untreated syphilis in the black male. He proposed that by observing the effects and deterioration of people with syphilis, they could learn more about the disease. They also took advantage of the fact that their organization has already obtained a good reputation within the Mason County community during its peak performance. With the obvious upper hand, the Rosenwald Foundation was able to deceive the community by making them believe that they were going to take part in another public health treatment program, when in reality that totally was not the case. This was confirmed by reports and correspondence that revealed that they had to pretend to give the participants treatment and even withhold medications, namely penicillin, that could actually treat the disease, in order to keep the individual sick. When they obtained the 623 men, they conducted blood tests on them. They did not disclose to them that they even had syphilis. Instead, they masked it as being bad blood and left it at that. To top it off, none of the men were even told they were part of the study, and were just handed painkillers to make them believe it was some sort of remedy. What was supposed to last a couple years was spanned out to 40. Participants were falsely assured that if they do experience severe complications, free hospitalization would be provided. This did not happen, of course. Instead, most people who died passed away in their homes and buried with no autopsies. The participants' names were recorded on a list and handed out to local hospitals and counties in order to exclude them from receiving direct medication. The vast vast majority of the public was still entirely naive about the atrocities going on. This disastrous secret came to light in the most interesting of ways. In the mid-1960s, a venereal disease investigator and interviewer named Peter Buxton came across the study and was instantly intrigued, shocked, and worried about the hundreds of participants who were being withheld treatment purposefully. At the time of this discovery, nearly 3 decades have passed. He marked one of the first people to notice the insensitivity and inhumane aspects of this heinous study and took action to speak out. He obtained copies of the reports and became even more disgusted as the findings became more clear. In 1966, he then wrote a letter to the Chief of the Public Health Service, or PHS for short, asking him 4 pivotal questions in his writing. He wrote, "I'm impelled to ask, 1. Was the study initiated to obtain physical examinations and autopsy reports on the syphilitic damage which these men were being allowed to endure? 2. Have any of these men been fully treated? 3. Have any of these men been told the nature of the study? And 4. Is the study still underway? In other words, are untreated syphilitics still being followed for autopsy?" The letter received no response, and by his own accord, Buxton resigned from PHS and pursued to find answers to expose the study once and for all. He made his way to the San Francisco Associated Press and told them everything that previously was kept a secret. All of a sudden, the story then made headlines in Alabama in 1972. An entire lawsuit was made against the creators and instigators of the study. What the lawyers have found was that the United States government violated the constitutional rights of the participants in the experiment. Even though they knew the participants had syphilis, they prevented them from receiving treatments, even after penicillin was created, which was an effective drug available to the public at the time. Additionally, the experimenters failed to disclose vital information to the 623 men, specifically failing to obtain their consent to participate in the study, failing to disclose that they even had syphilis, and leading them on to believe that they were being treated, when in fact they were doing nothing of the sort. They won the case, and settlements were made in 1975. The living syphilitics received $37,000, and controls received $16,000. The heirs of the deceased syphilitics received $15,000, while the heirs of the deceased controlled individuals received $5,000. The control group received less money because they didn't have syphilis to begin with, but were still unknowingly partaking in this inhumane study, which abruptly ended in 1972, after it was making headlines. The president himself even made a public apology to those involved in May 1997. President Clinton stated, "No power on earth can give back the lives lost, the pain suffered, the years of internal torment and anguish. What was done cannot be undone, but we can end the silence. We can stop turning our heads away. We can look you in the eye and say, on behalf of the American people, what the United States government did was shameful, and I'm sorry." Due to the horrors that unraveled from this study, new standards have been implemented to ensure ethical protocols. Such protocols include obtaining informed consent from the participant, meaning he or she must know what they are being involved in and why. This case is truly unnerving, where we can essentially examine entire medical professional communities and government officials, just people we typically trust, crossing the boundaries of science to birth the utmost cruel and unusual study that could have been going on to this day had not someone spoken up. I just don't know what compels people to treat others as less human than them. Surely, if their own loved ones were in the place of those 623 men, they'd let all hell loose. And in the end, what did they discover from their study? That people with untreated syphilis experience more pain, death, and torture than those who don't have syphilis? I mean, what a ridiculous excuse of a study. Obviously, untreated sick individuals will face more complications than healthy individuals. I really think they did this just to torture people, which is why they targeted the group that was the most vulnerable. Because I don't see how observing untreated sick people for 4 decades supplies anything to the medical and research industries. Like, I can't think of a single humane justification for this. I hope you guys found this video informative. And if you'd like to support me, my PayPal link is in the description below. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting content.